Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. Hey, have you ordered the brand new book yet? And by the way, again, thank you so much to all of you who have ordered the book. I appreciate that so very much, and it's very, very helpful. But the new book is Watching for the Parousia, Were Jesus' Apostles Confused? You know, in our examination here of, for instance, the days of Noah versus supposedly the days of the Son of Man. That's supposed to be a contrast, between AD 70 and the so-called end of time. We are told that, Matthew 24:36 divides the chapter. So verse 37, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it also be in the days of the Son of Man. That's talking about the final coming of the Lord. This is so foundational. I told you yesterday, and it's almost impossible to overemphasize this reality. Essentially, all futurist eschatology, in one way or another, certainly all futurist views of the Olivet Discourse are based upon the claim, as Kenneth Gentry says, as most commentators agree, he argues, that Jesus' apostles were ignorant, confused, or simply dull. It's difficult to imagine a more important claim for the futurist view. And Kenneth Gentry wrote 4 articles with which I interact extensively in this book. He is also supposedly writing what's supposed to be a major work on the Olivet Discourse to prove it was divided into 2 different subjects. I wish his book had already been out so that I could interact with it in this book. Unfortunately, it's not. I don't know when his book will be out, but I can assure you what is written in this book will refute anything that Mr. Gentry might have to say in his massive tome, because I interact with his 4 major points that are on his blog. You need to get a copy of this. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com. Now look, this book will normally be $18.95 plus $4.95 shipping for the month of July 2020 for U.S. orders only. Total delivered price, $15.95. Going to save you almost $7, so you need to take advantage of that. All right, so we are looking at Matthew chapter 24 with Luke chapter 17, showing that they are absolutely parallel with one another. Now, I want you to notice that in Luke chapter 17, Jesus said, "For as the lightning shines from one part of heaven unto the other, so shall it also be in the day of the Son of Man." But I want you to notice, he says, "But first, the Son of Man must suffer of this generation." Now, the first question that needs to be raised is, what is the exegetical, contextual proof that Jesus, in verse 27, is talking about an end-of-time event? But then he says, oh, but wait, before the end of time can come, I've got to suffer at the hands of this generation. And so Jesus inserts, so far, a 2,000-year gap between his discussion of his coming as the lightning and his suffering. Now, folks, the only reason anybody makes such an assumption, such an assertion, is because of preconceived ideas. We go back to Matthew chapter 24, and I want you to notice what has to happen. I mentioned this yesterday. I'm going to start at verse 21. "For then when? The time of the abomination of desolation." That was to be set up in Judea. That was to be seen by Jesus' apostles, that generation. All right? "For then will be great tribulation, such as not ever been, nor ever yet until this time, nor ever yet shall be. And unless those days," now remember, those days refers to the time of the Great Tribulation. They refer to the days of the abomination of desolation. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Then, then when? During that time of the Great Tribulation. Then, if anyone says to you, look, here's Christ, or there, do not believe it. For, see, that's a connective particle. For false Christ and false prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, even if possible, the elect. See, I've told you beforehand. So, these connective particles, for, connect it to the time of those days. Those days are the days of the abomination of desolation. Those days are the days of the Great Tribulation. But remember, the days of the abomination of desolation are the days of the first century when the apostles would see that abomination of desolation. When they would see that, they, the apostles, were to flee Jerusalem. They were to flee Judah and Judea. Then he says, therefore, still connected, still grammatically tied to the discussion of the days of the abomination and the Great Tribulation. Therefore, if anyone says to you, see, he's in the desert, do not go out. Look, he's in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. And we are supposed to believe that what Jesus does here is inserts, just like he supposedly does in Luke chapter 17, a parenthetical, oh now, by the way, my coming at the end of time will be like lightning shining from the east into the west. It won't be a private affair. Well, you know, listen, folks, even scholars such as N.T. Wright recognize that this language of the lightning shining from the east to the west refers to A.D. 70. He said the fall of Jerusalem would be an open manifestation, an undeniable fact for everyone to see that Christ was enthroned in the heavens. He was acting as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He was acting in judgment to judge those who had killed him and to vindicate his followers. In other words, A.D. 70 was the revelation of Jesus Christ as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Now, in tomorrow's video, I'm going to talk to you about the revelation of Jesus Christ, because that's what Matthew 24, verse 27 is all about. That's what Luke chapter 17, 24 and following is all about. It's the revelation of Jesus Christ. Well, when was the revelation of Christ to come? Well, let's see. To get ahead of ourselves, in Matthew chapter 24, verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days. Well, what's the tribulation of those days? It's linked to the abomination of desolation, which the apostles would see, that they could warn others about, and that they would flee from it from Judea. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the heavens, and the powers of the heaven will be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the heavens, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. That's not the revelation of Christ? So if Matthew 24:27 is the open manifestation of Christ at his parousia, then Matthew chapter 24, verse 29 and 30 is the open manifestation of Christ at his coming. And get this, amillennialists and postmillennialists alike, such as Kenneth Gentry, admit that Matthew 24, 29 to 31 referred to Christ coming in AD 70. Okay, how hidden was this manifestation of Christ in Matthew 24? Let's see. Sun will be darkened, moon will not give its light, the stars of heaven will fall, powers of the heaven will be shaken. No, not literally, not physically, not visibly, but manifestly nonetheless. So my point here is, ladies and gentlemen, when people say, well, look, verse 27 is talking about an open manifestation, an open revelation of Jesus Christ. My response to that is, yes, amen. But it is not a parenthetical insertion into the discussion of the fall of Jerusalem. It is saying the fall of Jerusalem will in fact be the open revelation that I am the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. I am acting in judgment as I had seen my Father act in judgment, John 5:21 and following. When I come in the glory of the Father, Matthew 16:27 and 28, as the Father had come in judgment many times before. He had never come literally, visibly, bodily, or physically, to use that term again. It is simply wrong. It is improper hermeneutic, based purely, strictly, solely, and exclusively upon a preconceived idea about the nature of the coming of Christ that causes anyone to go to Matthew 24:27, Luke chapter 17, verse 24, and see this as some kind of an unexpected parenthetical insertion into the text for which there is not one keystroke. Well, let's see. There's not one stylus stroke to indicate that Matthew 24:27 is a parenthetical, oh, by the way, comment. No. The grammar of the text ties verse 27 to Jesus' discussion of the time of the false prophets, the false apostles, the time of the abomination of desolation, and the time of the Great Tribulation, all of which are confined to the first century. And that open manifestation of Christ is nothing other than, nothing different from, and nothing less than His coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory of verse 30. All right, thanks so much for joining me for this morning's morning musings. Don't forget, tomorrow we're going to be going to Luke chapter 17 and verse 30, where Jesus talks about the revelation of the Son of Man. That time in which the lightning, He would be like the lightning shining from the east to the west. You don't want to miss it. Hey, don't forget, order your copy. Go to my website, order your copy. You'll be glad you did. I will see you on the flip side.